Hello, fellow travelers, and thank you once again for joining me on the Unbroken Ground. My name is Paul, and you are joining me for episode 41, titled, Where Are We Now? That's episode 41. So as you may be keeping track at home, we have 12 episodes left, and this is one of them. So before the next 12, I am looking for different suggestions for topics. So you can shoot a message at email. That's theunbrokenground@gmail.com, or you can find us at the Facebook page, Facebook.com/The Unbroken Ground, or on Instagram. If you have a topic that's burning in your brain that you want to hear me jabber on about, you can submit that. And I've got a couple already, but we are getting close to the end. There's 12 episodes left. I'm hoping that by 9 or 8 or 5, I don't know, I haven't decided yet, that I'll have some topics that are requested by you guys, so that I will have some special episodes talking about things you want me to talk about. Also super excited because I think that I'm going to be able to put together some dual podcast with some friends over the next couple of weeks, and so I'm excited about that as well. But no guarantees yet. Those are still in the plans. So hopefully, along with the weekly talk, there will also be some fun stuff in there as well with friends. So again, thank you for joining. This is episode 41. Where are we now? Where are we now? Where are we now? One of those. It just depends on how you read it, I guess. So thank you for joining me, and let's jump in. So the topic that I want to just unpack tonight for this podcast is the idea of following God and making decisions, and how all of that works together. And I am just going to be mostly self-biographical here. I'm just going to talk about myself and my experience, and hopefully that will relate to some of the things that you've seen or known, or questions that you have, depending on where you're at. So for me, I cannot remember a time when I wasn't a follower of Jesus Christ. Now, there was times when I wasn't. So I accepted Jesus officially when I was 8 years old and got baptized. And from that point, I have been a follower of Christ. There was a time in junior high where I kind of worked through some of the issues of my faith and had a crisis of belief, which is one of the, if you follow the psychology of norming and storming into your own beliefs, is one of those stages. And so from there, from that crisis of faith, I moved into a very committed, at the end of my 8th grade year, went to summer camp. I rededicated my life. I committed my life to full-time ministry, whatever that might look like. And I've lived underneath that lens since that point. And for me, the idea has been, am I open to where God directs me? Am I open to where I feel like God's calling me to go? And what are the things that would keep me from doing that? And this started at a young age for me. My senior year in high school, we had just gone to, so for several years as a youth group, we went to Glorieta, and it was an awesome time. And then we went to Super Summer at Hardin Simmons in Abilene, Texas. It's hot. There are no mountains. You're in a college dorm. You're eating college food. And God just was like, yeah, he was so real, and I loved it, and we Because previously we've been like, well, we'll go to Glorieta one summer, and then we kind of take off because it's more expensive to do that, so we got to find somewhere else to go, and we'll go to Super Summer. And what we found was, as a group, we were just so in love with what Super Summer did that we never went back to Glorieta. We just kept going to Super Summer. And so some of the fun things that I think as part of that is that when I was going to summer camp, some of the people that are now famous Christian praise and worship hymnologists, maybe, I don't know if you'd call them that, praise worship leaders that are for the world, were the people that were playing worship at my camp. So, for example, Chris Tomlin, when he was just getting his start with Breakaway and College Station, he was my worship leader one summer. He's short. He's like 5'4". He's a short little dude. Great singer, wonderful man of God. But I saw he was, before he was Chris Tomlin, he was the guy that just led worship at my summer camp. It's Mercy Me. Before they sang I Can Only Imagine, led worship there. I don't think David Crowder ever did, but he could have. I don't think he did though. But just those were the kind of types of worship experiences that I was getting when I would get to go to summer camp, and so we settled in on that. But one of the things then that both me and my best and probably one of my best friends at the time, a guy who is born on the same day as me. We were born in the same hospital, but we didn't meet until I moved to the little town that I lived in the second grade. And we both had that feeling that God was calling us to full-time ministry. We went to Hardin Simmons for Super Summer, and we were both like, "Yeah, I think I want to go to college here." So that became the plan for me and for my friend. And my friend did. He ended up graduating and became eventually one of the reasons that I ended up in seminary at Hardin Simmons. But for me, so that was the summer of my junior year was that Super Summer year. I was in the Purple School, which was those who kind of felt called to the ministry. Had some really, really strong experiences there, including as Purple School. One of the things that we did, so you had different colors of school. You had red school was the 8th grade, 7th going into 8th grade. Let's see, it was red. Oh man, I haven't thought about this in a while. It was red, then blue was freshman. I think orange was sophomore. I might get this wrong. Who cares? You guys don't know. Maybe you do. And you can send me an email and tell me how wrong I am. But orange, yellow, green was seniors, khaki was college people. But then purple was for juniors and seniors who had felt the call to ministry. And so we got to go, we got assigned two of the kids that were in red school. And not necessarily from our church group, just and all week long, we had the opportunity to write notes of encouragement to them. And one day we went and we actually went over and actually had a feet washing ceremony where we washed their feet. It's not the last time that I washed someone's feet, but it's not something that I've done a whole lot of, and it's very powerful symbolism to be like Jesus, to say I'm going to serve, I'm going to wash your feet. And so it was impactful. It's one of those things that I remember, and so it's like, yep, I think I want to go to Hardin Simmons. And I got to it's so vivid to me. I got to the Christmas break of my senior year, and everything I had done, I took the ACT, I took never took the SAT, so just always the ACT. Did fine enough. I took that twice and did well enough on the second one to get some academic scholarships. But I was like, I don't even know why I would send my scores to any other college, because I already know where I'm going. Right, I'm going to Hardin Simmons, and that was the plan. And the Christmas break of my senior year, God, not audibly, we didn't sit down and have a conversation, but God spoke to my heart, and that only way that God can. And he said, "You're not going to go to Hardin-Simmons." And I was like, "All right, okay, God, I want to do what you want me to do." And so within a matter of a month and a half, I had figured that out. I had been accepted to a couple other places. I had sent my, on a whim, I can't remember, I may be misremembering this. I had not sent my scores to all the places, so I had someone that I could send to them for free. So I decided to send my scores to both Angelo State University in San Angelo and also to Tarleton, which is where my parents went to college. And but it was close enough to the town that I grew up in that was where the people who couldn't get out of the town I grew up in went. So I didn't want to go there because that's too close to home. So Angelo State. So it ended up that one of my coaches who had just been hired that year to coach football, and my dad was a football coach, and they knew each other very well. He was from Wall, Texas, which is right outside of San Angelo, and he knew somebody in the admissions of Angelo State. He's like, "Hey, man, I can help you. I will put a good word in for you. You apply for this scholarship. You qualify. You can get this scholarship." And so I did, and I got it because of my ACT score. And I was like, I guess I'm going to Angelo State. I thought I was going to Hardin-Simmons, but that's not where I'm going. I'm going to Angelo State, and that's what I did. I didn't know anybody. I had never been. So until there was a freshman orientation fish camp. It was like a day where you just go. Your parents come out too, and you guys kind of get the tour of campus and all that kind of stuff. So I had never been to San Angelo before that. So I agreed. I signed up for a college in a town I'd never been to. I may not have ever really even heard of, because I was way out from Central Texas. It was way out in West Texas, although 2.5 hours from where I grew up. So not crazy, but I was like, I never had even been to the town, but that's where God had me going to college. And I just remember that, I mean, it's one of those milestones, right? It's one of those stones of remembrance that you pick up. It's an Ebenezer. That's what they talk about in the Old Testament, is that or like the stones they pulled out of the Jordan River, is like you set up a stone and go, hey, this is my reminder that God has brought me here. We sing that song, Come Thou Fount, right? And we say, here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I've come. And that's what it means. That's what an Ebenezer means. It means it's only by God's help that I've gotten here. So there I was. I went one time in June to fish camp. My parents, I think my parents went out with me. I think they stayed like in a hotel, or we all did, and then I went to certain things throughout the day, and then they went to certain things, and got everything squared away. And then I went out again for, I think that wasn't called fish camp. I think fish camp was the weekend before classes started. So I went out, my parents followed me out, took all my stuff, which wasn't a whole lot, my clothes, and settled in. And I knew no one. Those weird connections. The guy that I got pulled out of a hat, his name was the cousin of a guy that went to my church, or related that way or something like that. So that was the only person I knew, and I didn't even really know them. Just I knew they were related to somebody that went to my church. So I just started. It was a new, but it was where God had directed me, and so that's where I went, and I got involved. And I was immature but strong in my faith, but immature as a person, immature as a believer. But I knew I was very good at being legalistic. So one of the things, like, my suite mate, it was me and a roommate, and then we shared a bathroom, and shower, sinks, toilet, all that stuff, with two other people who lived on the other side of the bathroom, our suite mates. And my suite mate, who's one of the nicest dudes in the world, but he was dating the head of Delta or Delta Zeta, or I don't know, some girls' fraternity. And we got there, and the first night he was like, "You want to go to a party?" And I was like, "I absolutely am going to go to sleep right now." I do not. It's just one of those things that, for those who know me, and if you don't know me, I've never ever had a drink of alcohol. I've never had I've never smoked anything, never had any drugs outside of medication that had been assigned to me or over the counter. And I knew that was not who I was. And so it wasn't hard for me. Like I said, I really appreciated that guy. I thought he was a good dude. We weren't going to be in the same circles. And I didn't even know really how to be like a friend to him, because I didn't know how to break out of my Christian bubble so much. Because I grew up in the South, conservative as all get out, and one of the things that just was true is that we were like, hey, don't, if you hang around with if you sleep with the dogs, you get fleas, right? You hang with the wrong people, you're gonna pick up on stuff. And I was like, oh, I've got to keep myself clean. I got to be a good witness. So I can't do those things, and that was not necessarily the reason. It was like, I want to honor who God has made me to be. But showed up, didn't know anybody. Here I am, Angelo State. Got really heavily involved with the Baptist Student Ministry. Met a lot of cool people there. Made a lot of good friends, and through that, ended up working for a church. Lots of roundabout things, but ended up working for a church my senior year of college. My junior year, I'd worked as an intern at one of the bigger churches in town, but that year the youth minister he's like, hey, I'm getting out of town, I'm going somewhere else. And so I ended up working as a part-time youth minister out on the outskirts of San Angelo, and I did that for 3 years. I did some, and as I was doing that, of course, I was getting to the end of my. There were two classes that I took towards the end of my college career that were also kind of defining moments for me. And so the first one was a business writing class, which I lucked out because they had one professor who hated business students. He loved to take the stuff that you created and put up on kids, sorry, you're not going to understand this, but up on a transparency and project it up using the old overhead projector, and to circle it. If you made two mistakes, then you failed the whole assignment. And so I got a new guy who was like, he's like, all right, yeah, which was awesome. And one of the things that we had to do was put together a resume. And I was like, all right, I'll just make some kind of business thing up. And I literally had no idea. So I got an undergrad in business. I actually started out in accounting. I loved accounting. I probably, if I was going to do something in life, I'd probably be an accountant. I thought it was a lot of fun. But when I got down to some of the harder things, I was like, oh, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, so I don't want to learn this. So I switched over just to general business. So I got an undergrad in business administration, and so I went to my advisor, in business administration because I was like, I've got to come up with this resume, so I need to create some job that I'm applying for. And so I went to, and I'll never forget this. He was a management teacher, management professor, who had come out of the NSA. So basically, he worked for the National Security NSA. Yeah, he worked for the government and security, and then he was a professor of management. And I was like, hey, I have this degree. What can I do with this? And he flat out looked at me, college professor and all, said, I have no clue what you could do with that. And he's like, there's a career center in the UC, the Union Center. There's a career office. You can go find something there. I was like, all right. This is going really well. So I went over there and I looked at this big book. They have this big yellow book. It's like, oh, you have this degree? Here's all the things you can do. And none of them struck me as things that I wanted to do. So I made the choice of just applying for what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a youth minister. I wanted to work for a church. And so that's what I put my resume in for. I did not know whether the professor I had was a believer or didn't like Christians. I didn't know, but ended up being a pretty cool kind of thing. Like, he actually gave me some tips on how to do the interview and like how to answer some of the questions, and he had no problems with that. But it was one of those things of like, oh, I am getting this undergrad degree because I had this future plan of at one day going to seminary. In order to go to seminary, you gotta have an undergrad degree. Seminary generally doesn't care what the undergrad degree is. Now, some people would say, hey, you should probably do undergrad Bible. But for those that are keeping score at home, if you do undergrad Bible, what happens, you actually do a bunch of courses undergrad that you then go back and take at a seminary level. So, for example, like New Testament. You take that at undergrad level, you take that as a seminary level. Yes, they're different. Yes, they're going to have different focuses. Yes, it's going to be more, but you don't necessarily have to have a Bible undergrad to go to seminary. You just need to have a degree. And so I knew what I wanted to do. And so I'm hoping, and this is what I hope, I didn't pay as much attention as I should have. I didn't learn as many things as I probably should have about business because I knew I just wasn't going to do that. But I'm hoping doctors pay way better attention than I do. I hope. Because it was easy. I love that it was easy. I love that I chose something that was super easy for me. But I love to learn. And so I have no issue with the fact that I learned all of these things. I mean, there was a level, right? Like I said, I got to a level of accounting and I was like, I don't think I want to learn all of those things. It's just not worth it for me. So there's a level that I was like, but I love to learn. And so I didn't mind learning some things. I didn't mind learning about business. I didn't mind going to management classes and marketing classes and all those things. I just didn't necessarily try to create life skills out of the things I was learning because I knew that wasn't really where I was headed. And so that's one story. The other story of my senior year is we had this finance class, business finance. It's a capstone course, and what you do is you go and you play this game against other groups. And so you have 4 or 5 people that form a company. And then your company competes against other companies by basically putting in all this information into a simulation. And then once a week, the professor runs the simulation, and then from there, you find out how you're doing. So I was the numbers guy. Me and a guy named Frank, who was from Germany. We were the numbers guy. We put together Excel sheets. We got it down to a science. I think by the second week, we were so far ahead. Because we did so well, we were so far ahead that nobody could have caught us anyway, and so we just kept going. We destroyed everybody. We expanded into foreign markets faster than anybody did. We cornered the market in places that nobody else could. It was a lot of fun. I put together the financial reports. Frank did that too. We had a couple other guys who worked on some other type things in there. And one day, and so we're just killing it. I mean, we are just so far ahead. And one day, Frank, who's not a Christian, came to me, we were talking, and he's like, "Man, you're not going to go into finance? You're not going to go into business?" And I was like, "No, that's not my hopes. That's not my dreams. That's not what I'm supposed to do." And he goes, "Man, you're wasting your talent." And I was like, "Well, maybe." I think at the time I was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to use some of this stuff. I mean, if you work for a church, you're going to need to know how to budget things." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know, man. You're just wasting it. You're good." And I was like, funny story. I mean, funnier story. Funny twist of the story is a couple years later, maybe 5 or 10 years down the road, Frank found me on Facebook to say, "Hey, man, I'm working for some nonprofit stuff now." It was for the environment. It wasn't necessarily for the Christian world, but still, he was like, "I get it. I get why you are doing why you did what you did. That there was something more than just make money." Because he was like, "You could go make money. You would be good." And I was like, it's not my motivation. That's not what I'm chasing after. And so senior year comes and goes. I graduate. I stay on at the church that I've been doing part-time youth ministry, doing a lot of stuff, learning a lot of things. First kind of ministry on my own. Just wonderful memories of that. And I also, about halfway through that, I got a job working for a music store in town, selling musical instruments. Terrible at that. I'm not terrible at selling musical instruments. So here's the deal. Before the internet, kids, all right, so we're going back to before things like Amazon, and before things like eBay, and before things like Guitar Musician's Friend and Guitar Center were things. And so you didn't know how much stuff should cost. And so our music store had a system, and there were 3 prices. There was basically the sticker price, which nobody sold it at. There was the M price, which was the suggested value, and then there was the S price, which was what the lowest you could sell it at, and you just weren't making any profit out that. And I just had a hard time as a young salesman. I was getting paid either way, so I wasn't on commission. If I was making commission, I could have made more. But again, my motivation is not money, so I just was wanting to help people. So I sold at the S price most of my time there. I'm sure that I was not a high. I was good as an employee. I took care of things. I made sure things were happening, but I was not helping anybody get any money. I was not the person bringing in the money. And I had a problem with, and this is a side note, kids, don't rent to own stuff. And that's one of the things, like banishments feels like I don't want to buy something, but if there's any indication that your child is going to want to do band stuff, don't rent to own, because you get killed by, you end up, through interest, you end up paying more than that instrument is worth. And that's the same for a lot of stuff. I mean, I get it. Sometimes you find yourself but just know that you pay way more when you rent to own something than when you just buy it. And that was one of the things I had a huge problem with. It felt fairly shady to me that we didn't explain to people that renting to own an instrument was going to be a bad financial decision. I get it. It's not really the company's job. People should look into that. But I was just not good. I was just not comfortable with it. I don't like, my motivation is not making money. And so my motivation is helping people. And so I was not a good salesperson. So if you want somebody that's gonna, stick it to somebody, I have friends. I have a friend that works in the motorsports world, and he told me, he goes, "Yeah, man, I'll tell you, here's the price that it's listed at. That's the best price for me. You tell me how much you want me to knock off that, and I'll see what I can do. And he's like, usually people will knock about on a $6,000 a four-wheeler, they'll knock like $400 off. Yeah, I'll do that all day because I'm making money. And I'm just like, man, I just can't do that. That's not my style of things. So, oh man, this podcast is going to be really long because I'm only just to how I ended up where I ended up. But yeah, I'm going to cut it off. Maybe we'll do part 2 next week. I don't know. We'll see. Got a little more time though. So there I was doing that, and then I did some work for Baptist Student Ministries. They asked me to come back and be an intern for them. I did that, and while I was there, I began to get the feeling that God was calling me to something else, and a lot of times, that is the hardest thing to listen for and hear and understand. I was working for this church. I had a good friend. We lost our pastor. I was kind of the guy that stepped in and did a lot of the pastor work. And I had a good friend come over and become the pastor, and it was awesome. I loved working with him. Loved doing ministry with him. He's one of the only pastors I've ever seen in person. Not the only one, but one of the only ones. Just lay down on his face before God and pray. And I joined him. Like, he taught me that. So I love that. Thanks, Cork. And just how humble he was, and the way that he loved his wife, and it was great. But God started to work on my heart, and I was like, I think God's got something for me that's next. And the spring of let's see, that would have been 2 years after I graduated. The spring, I was interning. And one of the leaders, one of the college students who I was praying with and kind of mentoring as the intern, was like, "Hey, I need you to pray for this. Not hey, I need you to come do this," but he's like, "Hey, I need you to pray for this. There's this ministry that's going to open a family camp in Lake City, Colorado." Now, a couple of things here. God moments, God winks here. Lake City happened to be a place that I had gone to a mission trip with my dad, which is amazing. When I was a sophomore, we had gone to Lake City. So amazing, so beautiful. Helped put together. We put siding on the outside of the fellowship hall, and it was just such an amazing trip. Loved it. And so when he said, "Hey, yeah, it's gonna be Lake City," and I was like, already my mind's going, Lake City. I like Lake City. This, and I had taken my youth group 2 years before that to do Vacation Bible School in Colorado. So I am always keen to be in Colorado. He goes, "Hey man, we need another guy to come work at this ministry." And he's like, "Can you pray that God will send that person?" And I don't know if it was at that conversation or if it was shortly thereafter, maybe the next time we met. I was like, "Hey man, I'm your guy." I don't know what you guys are doing, and I really had no clue, and they had no clue. Really, they had some dreams and some visions, and I was like, okay. I have no clue what you guys are doing, but I'm in. And so he was like, "Okay, well, you got to talk to the people that are opening up the thing." And I did, and they said, "Yeah, come on up." So that's what I did. I packed all my stuff, took it back home to my parents' house, and then took my clothes, my guitar, and headed to Lake City, Colorado, to go work for a summer. After which, my plan was to go to Indianapolis and help my friend start a campus ministry there. He was a North American missionary, but I was headed there. And when I got to Colorado, God knew I needed to be there. As I met two people that shaped my faith in ways that even now I still can't understand. I still look back fondly on those times, and it was where I needed to be. It was where I needed to be. I think the problem that I struggle with, maybe we'll pick up in Colorado next week, part 2. What I struggle with is that I've always been ready to go whenever God calls. I've never been too attached to a place, to people, to a church or a job, that so attached that when God says, "Hey, I got something, I've got somewhere for you to go, I've got some place I want you to be," I've never been so attached that I've said, "God, I can't." Instead, I've said what I feel like is what Moses would say, is what Abraham would say, is what Paul would say, which is, "God, where do you want? I'm here." Moses says this. Moses says to God, after the whole golden calf thing, God goes, "Moses, just go on. You know what? I can't go with you people, because if I do, I will consume you." And Moses says, "God, if you don't go, then don't send me, because I don't want to go anywhere that you're not. Don't, God, if you're not going before, if you're not leading the way, if this is not where you want us to go, I'm not going." And God said, "All right, Moses, I'll go. I'll lead you. I'll be with you." And Moses is like, "That's right, because I'm not going anywhere you're not there." Abraham, God says to Abraham, "Abraham, gather your family. You're going on a journey, and I'll tell you where you're going. You're going to the promised land, and I'll tell you when you get there." And Abraham says, "All right, I'm going." Paul says, "God, use me wherever you want me to go, even to my death, even to Rome, so that I might proclaim the gospel." And I think that's always been my heart. And if I look back and reflect on my life, I feel like that's what I've tried to live true to. And I feel like I've followed God in all the places that I've gone. But it's hard to explain to somebody when they look at your resume, or they look at your life, and they go, "How are you here now? How did you get here?" And sheepishly, I go, "Well, I know it's cliche, but I just followed God." And even times now when there's been a few transitions that I've done over the past couple of years, at least different. We've moved. We lived in different houses. I've done different things at my job. It's sometimes hard to understand. Some people, God calls to one singular thing, and they do that thing, and that's good. It's good that God calls people to do that, but that's not my story. And as cliche as it may seem, I have no better answer than my life is a result of me chasing after who I think God wants me to be and where I think God wants me to be. I think that I've been listening, as I said last week. I've been listening, thinking through this idea of making decisions. And I think that one of the things that's hard for the world to understand, and even Christians, even people who know God to understand, is the choices that we make. God calls people to all different types of choices. He calls us to respond. And I honestly have never planned, like, how did I get here? And it seems like the easy answer, but it's the truth. It's not cliche, it's not glib. I'm here because God brought me here. Because I've prayed, I've sought His will, I've sought His guidance, and this is where I am. It does mean that that I have to accept some realities, that I have to accept some truth. I didn't put together a plan that would take me to be a pastor at a mega church. Here's a 5-step plan, or I didn't put together a plan that would put me into a place that I would be the first candidate for upper level leadership, because I just didn't consider those things. I just thought, God, and prayed, God, what is it that you want me to do? And then I was like, God, direct my heart. And I went where He directed my heart. So I worked in Colorado for 2 wonderful people who changed my life, my spiritual understanding. They trained me, they prepared me in ways they don't even know. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next episode. But the challenge I have for you, as I hope you've enjoyed maybe a little bit of me reminiscing about my life and trying to rehash who I am and why I am the way I am, is that you would hear the same call, that God would be calling you. Maybe it's not move across the country or move to a new job. Maybe it's just across the street to a neighbor, to a friend, to a coworker. Say, God, how do you want to use me? And then be willing to say, I will go. And live that out. That's the challenge. That's the goal. That's the hope. That we would hear and follow God. Hope you have a blessed week this week, friends. I hope that you can, as you pray, as you seek God, that you will hear His voice and speak to your heart, and that you'll follow. God bless.